funny. This guy, whose early music with his band has instigated most of the present punk mentality, this guy who in concert behaves like a possessed puppet, has just released the most formal, esoteric subterranean album you're bound to hear for some time. The Bowie influence is more than that. It is an atmosphere that permeates every groove, and like the Berlin show, where most of the LP was recorded, it turns familiar sights into your landscape of death. Is it the sound of someone who has come back from the dead, or is it the sound of someone who is going there and trying to take a few traveling companions along? On Sister Midnight, on Baby, on China Girl, there is still hope, in spite of the terror that is hovering just above. Sister Midnight especially works well, with Iggy endlessly pleading and growling for a way out of his nightmare while the band lays down its ponderous approximation of what can be called robot rock. The music that starts where Diamond Dogs left off. On Baby and China Girl, Iggy sounds like Lou Reed and Bowie, respectively, not because of conscious imitation, but an inevitable result since both songs seem to have been written with these creature styles in mind. But it is on Dum Dum Boys that Iggy's own visions break through. On this cut, his voice is perfect, a chilling sound in itself, as it takes us further than we've ever been to where the walls close in and one needs some noise. Iggy's been there, and I think it's good to have a visionary amongst our disturbed lot. Mass production left me cold, but the opening Beyond the Galaxies type of intro is obviously Bowie's signature to the whole project, and works well in its way, the message being it's not that friendly in outer space. Tiny Girl is kinda nice, a bit depressing. Nightclubbing and fun time would revive a dying party as surely as would a funeral march. A must of an album for the more depressed among us. The rest will play it only now and then, when the need for a little dose of despair strikes on a grey, useless day. This one kicks. The Jam are one of the hottest new bands in England. Tough and tight. Smooth black suits and ties and vicious short hair. They're sort of geezers you push into the other room when the vicar calls. If they weren't into music, they could have the biggest protection racket in town. The Jam are a threesome. They just sound like a sixsome. Bass, drums, and on guitar, Paul Weller, who wrote all of the songs except Batman theme, which makes the original TV theme sound like a dergie. A well-balanced mixture of songs here, teen dream romance and punk anger. This is dancing, jumping action music. No sitting around on the floor smoking those damned joints to this stuff. If you like the Damn, you'll like the Jam. But don't get the idea these geezers are copying anyone. They're not. Although at times they do sound like an early Who, at their peak, but angrier. To be played loud, even listening to it on headphones will have the bleeding neighbors complaining about the noise. Less songs than on the first album, but don't deduct that it's all easy going within everybody's grasp. Wire are not connected to many familiar daily feelings. Their sound may now and then remind you of rock and roll, but believe me, it's pure coincidence. Just listen to the words and tell me you feel at home. At times they also find themselves in the same surrealistic grounds Eno explored a while back. But unlike the balding wizard, they don't get playful or mischievous about it. I doubt there is much they find amusing or exciting. It would be so easy to accuse them of indulging in icy, boring exercises, except that there is a definite, cohesive solidarity to everything they do, a slightly superior patience, as if it was naturally up to us to comprehend what they do, but they will not rush us, or maybe they don't care at all. When we see them live, we may see what is behind their diamond hard surface. Shit, times are strange. Who would have thought that one day I'd go to a concert to resolve a mystery? The first song is a studiously disguised Come and Get Your Love by Redbone. The rest gets much better. The flip side of their hit song is nicely remade. They dropped most of the horns and added a modern lover. Some of this is very catchy in a light-hearted, melancholic way. I peed my pants and wish I could wring out my underwear so everyone who wasn't there would mistake the urine for bona fide tears. I taped some of these songs to my wall. I want to talk as much as I want. I want to give the problem to you. But I have periods of saccharinity when pop is my favorite music. At those artificially sweetened moments, I play this album because it's arty pop, and I can feel superior because I listen to arty pop, and it's not just crafty pop. And you can dance to it without being a complete maniac or total moron. It's got beats, melodies, counter melodies, all those things I know nothing about, but can act as if I can appreciate. Well, Talking Heads, namely that guy who plays guitar and does all the pinching G-string vocals, well, that guy knows all about beats and melodies and contrapposto. Whatever. He knows all about everything. But I know something he seems to have neglected. If they want top 10 hits and all the money in the world, then they need to take the arty out of the pop. Lyrical pretensions are something we all in the hit record buying public can live and gladly identify with. Musical pretensions, well, not everyone's been to a nifty school of design, but I listen to it. I want to better myself. This is a record. It has music. It's by 4 people called Talking Heads. They play some music. It's such good music. It has rhythm, lots of rhythms. Some are disco, some are slow, some are funky, some are funny, some are fast, some are jerky, never boring, always thinking. They work with rhymes like no one else does. They have a friend, his name is Eno. He works with sounds, changes theirs, makes them haunting, makes them strange. He's found his match. It is with Talking Heads. They have a singer, his name is David. He sings real high. He sings real strained. He makes his voice do all sorts of things, much more different than he's ever done before. He writes the words. They are quite simple, but the meaning, they are not simple. Simple objects, 1,000 meanings. One word, one world, one group. They are Talking Heads. They are geniuses. I am jealous. Critics analyze. I am cautious. I could gush. I could explode, but I paraphrase. This ain't no punk. This ain't no new wave. This is important. More than you'll ever know till 10 years later. Long-awaited album from the leaders of the New York scene. From the very first notes of See No Evil, one knows this group has very little in common with the Ramones and the other hotheads of the noise generation. It is definitely a well thought out work, closer to the poetry than metal music. Tom Verlaine is a romantic, although a very morbid one. On certain songs it works well, and the combination of surrealistic imagery and very catchy licks will have you humming along with some verses while staring blankly at your kitchen wall. On others, Verlaine's visions get lost in the fog, and the long directionless instrumental breaks will just annoy you. It is not easy to write about such an ambitious album, because one cannot help but admire what the man is trying to do, even when it does not do it to you. On each side, it is the first song that grabbed me. Sure fell in love with the line, "Pull down the future with the one you love," and See No Evil. While I became more and more impatient as the album played on, maybe it has to do with the inevitable monotony generated by Verlaine's dark, brooding thoughts. Darling, darling, do we part like the seas, the roaring shell? Maybe the music lacks the eerie quality one would expect with such lyrics. It is all too present, too close, too predictable. Can't help think about what Nico Cale have done with similar moods. A strange album, but not strange enough. Next time. 14 more number 1 AM hits, but you still can't get a Ramones lunch pail. By the time the 4Rs get the recognition they deserve and put out the greatest hits LP, at the rate things are going anyway, it'll have, what's 20 times 14 songs? I bet you the Ramones are pissed. They and everybody else knows how much commercial appeal their sound has. They and everybody else thought that this album would break in a big way. Who says there's no censorship in America? We punks are victims of oppression. This fucking album should be number 1. Don't know how these 3 ever got linked with the punk hordes, except for maybe a certain attitude towards the business and the fact that they look like they regularly dyed their hair. Honest rock and roll with the occasional reggae-inspired tempo. Any decent pop musician with a pair of ears must be finding it hard to avoid any trace of Jamaican influence, is what you'll find here. Tasteful melodies, no bullshit flash, although the trio format sure can lend itself to the worst excesses, known as the cream syndrome, make up for the lack of instruments by sheer overkill. A pleasing batch of songs for a bopping afternoon. Try it, America. You'll want more. Just because it's English doesn't mean it's bitter and distasteful. I guess they thought it real cute that they put little pictures instead of song titles on the album label, but I think it's really a pain in the ass. Guess it's a cheap device to get you to pay close attention so you can figure out the song titles. Or are they meaningless? Anyway, this group has such a fashionable approach that I reel back from their cleverness. The current trend is to underproduce. It's an obvious reaction to the recent wall of distortion that engulfs London. So now we get undermix, clearly separated, simple and apparent songs where less means more. Folk punk, if you would. Well, I really wouldn't, except that the songwriting is very good. The musicianship is very good. The album is nice and harmless and thoughtful, and I never play it. Should do well among the Melrose Avenue crowd. Any band that would blatantly lift The Stranger by Camus for a rock song, killing an Arab, says it all about this group's intent. That and the reverent spirit of Ray Davies. Thank God we haven't become that precocious. Yet. Let's not beat around the bush with this. This is more than a step forward. It's a giant leap. It's possibly not punk anymore as we know it, although the attitude is there, crisper and sharper and more threatening than it ever was. Only the ammunition and the goals have been redefined and improved. I haven't convinced thousands yet, but I have the faith in the neutral order of things, which isn't natural at all, but proceeds by odd, unexpected jumps to God knows what. This is music for insomniacs, with a chip on their shoulder, and insomniacs could take over if they got organized. This is music for kids with nothing to lose, and for musicians with everything to learn. This is the sound of what we all feel but haven't pinpointed yet. This is a map to a strange future we will all try to effortlessly fit into while the rest of our peers are running into each other like blind chickens with their rockabilly disco, protest punk badges falling off in the melee. This is ruthless teen genius for a real better future, and Devo are just reactionary comedians with a linear brain pattern. This album is altering my genes better than the Harrisburg evening winds. One can truly go on and on and on about this. Lyrics, music, recording, cover image, you name it. There's so much to say, explain, rave, support. From the opening Spiral Scratch to the final Spiral Scratch quote, it's all there. The most now effective new wave album to come out in months. Along with the Clash's first effort and the Bollocks gem, this is what it is all about. Everyone else take a step back, swallow your pride and admit it. What's more, it's a hell of a surprise, cause the singles preceding this mammoth sure didn't warn us of what was to come. I mean, they were good. Like dozens of other singles are good, and attract our attention for a few spins, but this just demands to be played again and again, with no apparent end to it. Everyone is going to pick a favorite. Mine, today, is 16. Yesterday was Autonomy, or Fast Cars. Each song is complete, perfect, sharp, a detailed, nervous little ball of fire. Wit and cynicism. It will make you love solos again, and drum breaks, and obscure English maniac depressive proclamations. It will rock you and puzzle you and tickle you. If a punk band can pull such a first album out of their combined heads with such obvious ease, we must all be doing something right. I can't seem to agree with myself about these two albums. It's another contradicting, damage-hate love affair. What plagues me more is the fact that no matter what I say, no matter what anyone says, Devo is doomed to stardom. They're on the radio as I write these words. There's no escaping. But they should be on the radio and on television, and they should take their unique concept to every place possible. They've been at it for 6 years, mostly in private, and when they did play in those formative years, it was mostly to hostile audiences, so I respect their intentions. They're a great modern live unit, possibly one of the best. Power and presence they've harnessed is close to being awesome. Workforce kind of typifies their general attitude. It's a fair to good diva representation, but the steep prices being asked on the auction block make it an unnecessary one to own. Even though it far outdoes the $7.98 list studio LP, $12 and up is hardly worth it. I've heard infinitely better private tapes, and there's another bootleg. This one, by the way, bears an incredible Devo touch of a Marbury performance. There are some zesty moments here though. Smart Patrol Mr. DNA is a well-constructed epic with some intriguing electronics. Gut Feeling has a certain toe-tapping bliss and great hooks. But there's generally an exciting ragged feeling of making these import versions. While Workforce is probably one of the best recorded bootlegs, It lacks the punch needed to make it really special. The in-between song, pseudo Cheech Chong fire sign stoned out nonsense, adds a deadly boredom factor. I own this record, but I wouldn't recommend dashing out to buy it. In fact, if you're not a fanatical devotee, I wouldn't recommend it at all. The studio work on the Warner Brothers LP is so flat and dull, contrived, that it puts me to sleep. Okay, there are some interesting snatches here and there. It's just a little difficult to get past garish items, trinkets like Come Back Joni, Space Junk, Vandergraaf Goes Mod, Shrivel Up, or Praying Hands. The latter works much better on the bootleg. The rest sound remarkably like some Tube's Nightmare dribble. It's all we need, right? Depending on the mood. The case with much of their material, some of it is very persuasive, like Too Much Paranoias, which is positively menacing at times and lame at others, or the wimpy Love on Sloppy. Gut feeling still knocks me out, but there's a little difference between it and the other versions. But these are old songs for anyone who has seen Devo. If I had never heard of them before, they would have fared better. The question is, just how many miles does Devo intend to get from a few original ideas? Truthfully, how many times can you listen to Jocko Homo in a row? Please, anything but that. And Eno's production, while being tasteful and spare, is hardly the sparkling keenness he normally achieves. In a nutshell, this record is a profound disappointment. Since my initial curiosity wore off, I've hardly played it. I now think twice about shelling out cash on frivolous things like records by reputation. Don't know why I bought this one, really. Maybe because it was on Stiff. The home of the damned. Huh. Elvis don't look too heavy on the cover. I must have been drunk that day. Why do I want a record with a silly looking rockabilly dude on it? Actually, it's much worse. It's not that he's got a bad voice, or that the music is bad. It's fucking boring shit that was boring already 3 years ago. It's Bruce Springsteen meets Van Morrison, meets the rest of them down-home slick rockers. It's modern country music to smoke joints to, while the dogs are playing on the rug and the old lady is making her famous stew in her Earth catalog kitchen with the racks full of spices and the herb charts on the wall. It's laid back even when it rocks, and it doesn't rock that often. Sounds from the past. Big nostalgia item. I couldn't swear, but I believe they even use a fucking drobo. Want to know more? These guys, Elvis anyway, there are no mention of the others, are dying to be American. They must have Star-Spangled Banner dreams every night. Elvis, why do you crave so much for the wrong America? And if dismissing adequate music just because it's got the wrong cultural connotations and a less than zero level of excitement is being a snob, I'm happy I'm one. Maybe next time it'll prevent me from having to listen to this mush even once. The split is apparent. One side of the label is black and white. The other side is white and black. So the conflict in the title is real, apparently. Get it? And the music is dark, moody, oblique, straightforward with enough reverb to keep it all somewhat mysterious. The vocalist is Jim Morrison's latest incarnation. I really like hearing a British singer without one of those fucking obvious accents. And by being melodic, the group avoids some of the grayer pitfalls of their existential buddies in the industrial wasteland. But sometimes it strikes me as strange that they would choose to represent a crisis, not in terms of energy tension, but in a medium slow manner that sometimes threatens to think itself into desperation before the song is over. And the one straightforward rock song on the album is such a jarring intrusion that you begin to wonder about the sincerity of all this living dread sound. Surely the wolves waiting to snap at the latest trend will take this subterranean opus to their thrill-seeking hearts. Adolescent poets and new wave journalists will ponder and debate, but so what? This album has all the intentions but one shortcoming. It just doesn't stick. The textures are pleasant, the sounds are recognizable, but somehow not memorable. This week's hit, next week's obscurity? How fast we move these days. A brutal intelligence stays all through this, which now and again slackens the necessary tension and other times jacks it up to artery-busting abandon. When those unpleasant things in their brains come to the surface and insecurities are exposed, the obscure lyrics with the Ramones Ribery's guitar hybrid blend into something downright nasty. Repositions explode like bombshells, and everything coheres together into a causality bleak revelation. If you're in the wrong mood, it could be dangerous to listen to this record. Do they mean never mind all the shit you've heard about this group? The hype? The filthy records and hateful innuendos? Here's the music. Here's the sound they're all dying from. Here's the stuff they can't take? Probably. Unless they simply mean never mind fancy covers and pics. Here's the package. No frills, no effort, listen to it, or get fucked. Here's the Sex Pistols. The English release that first came out is missing one song, Submission, apparently added on after its initial run of a few thousand copies. I only heard Submission once, so I can't really say anything about it. The rest is the same, and that I listened to it already so many times. I don't even need the fucking album anymore. Just a little memory click, and it's all there, in its unbelievable splendor. This is such a mother of an album, I could drool just trying to convey its multifaceted beauty to you. 4 of the songs everyone already knows by heart, yet there are no way highlights of the LP. The others may actually be better in every way. They are 17, Bodies, New York, EMI, Liar, No Feelings, and Problems. Every one of those unheard before tunes is so tight, so packed with obsessed energy, so unbelievably raw and essential in its sounds that it will either make you revise your musical standards faster than anything you've heard in the past 10 years, or send you shivering in a corner with the sudden fear of tomorrow. Any other reaction will only be a simple and pathetic defense mechanism devised by your own chicken shit self to protect you from the truth. For this is the sound punk rock has been promising us. This is what has been hinted at, flirted with, and finally dodged by the past few chaotic months of musical experimentation. From the righteous outrage of Liar, to the sarcastic, egocentric stuttering of No Feelings, from the vicious psychological warfare of 17, to the anti-brotherhood sympathy manifesto of Problems. Rotten and his gang attack every one of our soft spots, every little nook and cranny, or somewhere we have kept a few comfortable notions and illusions of good life and easy goings. Nothing is spared, from girlfriend to big corporation, especially not even oneself. This is the most lucid vision rock music has given us in a long time, and it will generate a lot of hate and resentment because of it. The music is scary in its precision and power, with the drums and guitars burning their way through your head as napalm through the jungle. But it is Rotten's voice and stance that makes any comparison useless. The shady little character has to be the most mesmerizing visionary ever produced by the underworld of rock and roll, an unholy prophet of instant, unavoidable nihilism, the common voice of everyone's darker side. It's not often one can taste honesty seeping through one's latest album, and it's not often one can feel grateful for such a load off so-called nasty, immature, and self-destructive emotions. Even if the Pistols were to disappear tomorrow, the music world would never be the same. It may take a while for the scars to show, but they are permanent. One funny little group's first album, and suddenly there must be more than 10 or 20 acknowledged professional outfits marked for oblivion. Relevance is an elusive thing. As the ones in high places are about to learn, they are all liars, liars, liars. Probably as many things could be said about the Talking Heads' new album as there are sections in the cover composite picture. I never did like the first LP very much, and was very astonished to find myself thoroughly obsessed with by some parts of this second release and only mildly annoyed by others. Once past the initial shock of David Byrne's shrill, maniacal voice mechanics and sometimes neo-funky discoid riffs, used here for rather different purposes, one quickly discovers. I got trapped by the super cool, ironic music laid down by these ordinary Eastern wasp. Then there's the Eno production, immediately detectable when this or that tune threatens to repeat itself or lose its initial impact, but actually present and in action at every moment, burying Byrne's words when the music can say more than the lyrics, giving the second part of a tune that slightly automated touch of the absurd when the obviousness or predictability might set in. Throughout the album, there is a constant dual effect, which produces in the listener that exciting inability to decide if what he is hearing is simply carefully crafted pop music or something rather more sophisticated and disturbing. And if you conclude that the Talking Heads are just too clever or remote from real life to have any real impact, like a bunch of artists toying with music before they tire of it and go on to toy on with another medium, the final big country number should set things straight. They are acutely aware of the rest of the world and its trite ways, but simply want no part of it. At least not as long as the price of constant boredom has to be paid for living in it. In a rather slow rocking tempo, Byrne starts by enumerating what he sees while flying over the American continent, stadiums, restaurants, and bars, for later in the evening. It's all vaguely patriotic, except for the detached tone, but in no way are we prepared for the devastating chorus, which wonderfully smacks of snotty elitism and even un-Americanism. Then he describes the daily life led by all those millions below, the shopping, the evening get-togethers, the kitchens full of food, and once again blows up in emphatic denial of kinship or sympathy. I wouldn't live like that, even if a couple of verses toward the end admit the loneliness and inherent sadness that such a refusal carries with it. The overall effect is that of optimism and gladness in the superiority of one's fate. It is also slightly mad. But anyone refusing to drown in the big warm brotherhood of the average man is always considered crazy anyway. Certainly the most important cut of the album. It is, after all, the only tune vaguely connected to buildings or food. It is also the least equivocal in its message. Once the more obscure aspects of their art are tackled and exercised, the Talking Heads just might soon turn out one of the most devastating statements of this musical era.